Today, I'll be talking to you about the symbol and theme in the book Life of Pi, written by Jan Martel, published in 2001. As we all know, this is a story about a young Indian boy who survives an enormous shipwreck and has to spend months on a lifeboat with a tiger who is named Richard Parker. Along the journey, it teaches Pi many lessons about life. The symbol that I have chosen is Pi. Pi is short for his full name, which is Pisin Maltar Patel, but it's way more than just a short version of his real name. It's a short but meaningful name, and these meanings are shown all throughout the story. This symbol is best explained early on in the novel. In Part 1, Chapter 5, the quote reads, "And so, in the Greek letter that looks like a shack with a corrugated roof, and the elusive irrational number with which scientists try to understand the universe, I found refuge." This is during the first day of school. At this time, students were introducing themselves, and Pi was writing down his new nickname on the board with the number Pi beside it in each class. He did this because he wanted to encourage his classmates and teachers to start calling him Pi and not Piscine. In that quote, he mentions and describes about the actual symbol of Pi, which is a number used to calculate distance in a circle. The key to this is that the number Pi is irrational. Irrational means not being based on logical reasons or not thinking clearly. When people use this number, most of the time they round it to only 3.14. This is because the number is so long and complicated that us humans can't fully comprehend it. Just like what the book is trying to say, some realities are simply too hard to face. The number Pi has no actual fixed boundaries, so you can't really make total sense of it. And that's what this story is emphasizing about life. It's just a huge mixture between rational and irrational. The theme that this symbol best represents is survival or suffering. This theme is present in the majority of this book. Pi is stranded in a lifeboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for over 200 days. He lost his entire family, and it's only just himself with an adult tiger. So now not only does he have to worry about starvation, but he also has to protect himself from Richard Parker. Eventually, Pi has to give up his vegetarianism because he will have no choice but to kill and eat fish and turtles. Also, in the story, he learns to cope with the tiger later on. This whole struggling to survive leads the characters to make deeds of heroism and awfulness. An example of the theme of suffering is shown in Part 2, Chapter 60. In this chapter, Pi is still on a lifeboat with the tiger trying to survive. The quote is, "For the first time I noticed, as I would notice repeatedly during my ordeal, between one throe of agony and the next, that my suffering was taking place in a grand setting. I saw my suffering for what it was, finite and insignificant, and I was still. My suffering did not fit anywhere, I realized, and I could accept this. It was alright." During this time, Pi wakes up during the night and notices vastness of the sea and sky. He realizes that his suffering is taking place in a grand setting, which makes him feel really small and insignificant while being in the middle of the ocean. Instead of seeing himself as the absolute center of the setting, Pi believes that the setting makes his suffering even less significant and purposeless. The theme of suffering is present in our life all around the world. The best example of suffering in the real world is people who are trying to beat cancer. This affects millions of people, and it gives them huge disadvantages mentally and physically. Having cancer deeply affects emotional health. It can have a huge impact on their families, and patients would start to feel depression, anxiety, and fear. Changes in body image affects their own self-esteem and confidence. Cancer causes major side effects such as appetite loss, constipation, constipation, diarrhea, swelling, and fatigue. Despite all this, they never lose hope and fight against it. Much like in a novel, Pi goes through a lot of mental and physical suffering during his time on the lifeboat. He has to cope with the situation and decides to live peacefully with Richard Parker instead of trying to kill it. His constant struggle to stay alive is what keeps the tension throughout the book. I believe that this type of media form is the most suitable and effective way to deliver my presentation. This is effective because of the visualization it offers. Schools have all different types of learners, and some students just prefer to have visuals to look at. It's a lot easier to analyze and image rather than written descriptions. This type of media form reaches the audience because it allows students to recall information in the future a lot better through seeing images being displayed. Visuals are able to catch and hold an audience's attention and can help them understand the material better. Overall, it's just better to use visuals to communicate with people